How's it going, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Why the Mountains podcast with me, your host, Stephen Farley. If you are a hill walker or a mountaineer, or just someone with a love of stories of adventure in the mountains, this is the podcast for you. In this first series, we are exploring the history of Irish mountaineers on Everest, from the earliest pioneering days right up to the latest commercial expeditions. If you haven't listened to our earlier podcasts, I suggest you do that first before continuing with this latest episode. This is the first part of our interview with Terence Banjo Bannon, a man from my home county of Armagh, and I must say a thoroughly interesting and entertaining character to spend some time with. I hope you enjoy it. Whilst Banjo is a little bit older than me, he comes from Newry, just down the road from my hometown of Armagh. I was really interested to hear about his life growing up in Newry, a town in the north of Ireland that bears its fair share of scars from the troubles that run deep. Just as a quick warning, there is the odd bit of bad language in this podcast, nothing too much, just part and parcel of two lads from this part of the world having a chat.
Yeah, so growing up, just in a nutshell, I live in the north east side of Ireland. And growing up, I was born in the 60s. So come the 70s, and economically, socially and politically, because of the conflict in the north of Ireland, it was kicking off. My father had died in 1971 in the middle of the Troubles when it was just kicking off. So my mother was a country woman, and she was now in the town. I was in a big housing estate, and at that stage, I had a great youth, but it was madness, you know what I mean? My normal day was going to school and getting stopped by the Brits, and then, you know, the hassle with that, and then throwing stones at them and thing. And that's how it could end. And then, obviously, the conflict would have taken over most of your youth. But growing up then, the escapism was that the mountains were behind us. We had Camelot Mountain and Slieve Gully and stuff like that there. And I suppose so I really get into it. There's a quarry beside us. There was a big crack line. And I remember at a young age just climbing up it, no problem, you know. And all my mates couldn't do it. They're just, says, what? What's wrong with that there? And they just couldn't do it, you know. And they were scared of heights, or else they just didn't have the physical, you know, prowess. And I thought, here I'm into something, because at that stage I was into boxing. That was my first love, and hurling. And I loved the climbing. I loved the escapism away from all the madness. The mountains did give me that solace of, you know, just the excitement. I love excitement. I love challenges. And it was just great, you know. And I always loved getting away, hill walking and stuff like that, and mainly rock climbing. So then I get into mainly like I had a wee thing in my head. I wanted to climb the highest mountain at the age of 12. I wanted to climb the highest mountain in the mornings. So obviously, being poor background and stuff like that, I got enough money to get a bus to Newcastle. And then from there, I walked up, got the bus, walked up the Slieve Donnet. And I think I did Donnet in less than an hour, because it all pumped up and stuff like that. And I remember coming down to the call between Combada and Donnet and meeting a farmer. And I said, here, how do you get the Restrader from here? But I knew it. And he says, he thought I was joking. And he thought, where's your parents? So I was like, I says, I am pretending that they're way on ahead. He says, well, if you keep following that wall, you'll come to a big road there. You cross the road and then keep following, you know, it's Spelgadams. That's what I did. I followed the wall all the way through the mountains. It was like 27 miles. Age 12, when you look back, going, you know, what was I thinking, you know? And my mom was probably going, where is that child? And then I remember thumbing it home from Restraver, racked, getting in the car and telling the fella what it did. And obviously he didn't believe me, you know? And I realised that. And then my mom was worried, where were you all day? Because there might have been a bomb going off somewhere. And I had said, you know, I was climbing in the mornings, and she thought it was just no delay, you know. Right, son, okay. But the next day, that Monday, I went into school, and I had said to my friends, I have it. I am going to climb the highest mountain in the world. And everybody laughed.
How many times in this podcast series will we hear that the mountains are an escape? They certainly were an escape for Banjo, from an upbringing in a deprived part of Newry, and an escape from the Troubles, something everyone growing up in the north of Ireland will be glad of from time to time. His mates may have laughed at him when he said he would climb the highest mountain in the world, but Banjo was clearly deadly serious about this. I asked him a bit more about it.
I suppose I had the love for the great outdoors, love for, mountains and the environment and the culture of it all. But the challenge, and I just went, that's my challenge. It clicked with me, and that was it from that early age. And then I realised, how am I going to achieve? You've got inspirations and aspirations as a child of something, people want to do Gaelic or the boxing. I really love the boxing. And I wanted to excel in that. But the outdoors was that gift for me as well, and that it pushed from there. Right, I come from a background politically, economically, I dreamt of these things. I read books about Everest and the likes of K2 and Nanga Parbat and Annapurna and stuff like that, and I just wanted. That's where I wanted to go, and I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I had that vision. I had that dream, and when you have that dream, it's something that can't stop you. And I remember then, as started getting on in life, I remember reading a book. It was T. Lawrence about. There was one of the quotes, and I went, "That's it," and it was about all men dream, but not equally. But those who dream by the night will wake up in the morning and realise their dreams were just folly, and in other words, they didn't mean anything. But the ones who dream by the day were dangerous men. They may act out their dreams. And I went, that's me. I'm a daydreamer. I dreamt of being on the summit. I visualised that I was there at a young age. Don't ask me how I was going to get there, because anybody that was in the mountains, years ago, you had to be picked for country. And there was no sort of, when I was growing up, I was at a young age, there was no such thing as, getting paid to go on. Actually, you had to be picked to be on a team. And I went, right, how am I going to get on this team? How am I going to get myself there?
How was Banjo going to get there? He was climbing at a time when country expeditions were still in vogue, and it just so happened that Ireland was sending a team out there. But would it come too early for Banjo? He was putting some of the pieces together in terms of training and experience, but as we know, you sometimes need to be the right person in the right place at the right time.
I went the education library boards, became an instructor at 17, so I got my single pitch ward and multi pitch ward and rock climbing and canoeing and all the outdoor stuff. So I probably was aiming for to be an outdoor education instructor. And then you meet different people from that, and from that I was in the mountain centre and met up with Dawson Stelfox and all them lads who were in the big time climbing, and I realised that they were organising expeditions, and they were going to do the first Irish expedition in 1993, and I wanted to be part of that. I didn't know how. I remember putting myself forward, and then it says, yeah, there's actually track teams going there. And then I asked El Fox about, if I could get there, could I go higher? And obviously, he said it tongue in cheek, but I would take things literally, And he says, well, if I think you're fit enough, we'll see how far you can get up there, So I went, right. So I took that at face value, with that, right. I'll make myself indestructible, And, Mark Twain, there's a great book, and it's about, light and right. It was a book that changed my life, because the first time I went to Mount Blanc and stuff like that, I was 19. I went solo. I went to climb all these mountains solo. So at 19, I went over to the mushroom factory there in Ballyhonan near and the boys were going out all the time over into Italy, but they would go through the Mount Blanc tunnel. And a lorry driver said, yeah, we go out there all the time. And I says, right, I'm going climbing in the Alps. because there was a guy, Kevin Quinn, Andy Carden was the ones who I would have been climbing with and working with in Shannockmore, and they'd sort of give me you know, an overall thing. Here's what you should do, and here's the routes and stuff like that. The only thing is, I wasn't going to be there with anybody else, so I was going to have to solo it. So I just made myself, kept climbing, got my fingers strong, got my head right, and looked through the routes. It was old school, looking through old paperwork and, looking topos and stuff like that. And went over there and started to soloed everything. And when I look back now, I was going, how did I did half it, But I was hungry then. And when you're hungry, you just did things. I soloed this Cherry Coolware, but I was climbing myself. It was up, it was just off Mount Blanc to tackle. I remember soloed it, camped at at the Folly Blanche, went up into Cosmagaret, come down off that, went up onto the triangle, did a big field diff onto the top, and amped off myself. I was in. That was it. I just knew. I was building myself up to get into the climbing that I could build myself up for the climbs that I'm gonna do.
Banjo was driving on, doing what he wanted to do his way. If it meant going it alone, so be it. A driven individual for sure. I guess it's fair to say that Banjo wasn't afraid to hang it all out there in his pursuit of adventure and excitement in the mountains. But there is only so much that can be achieved by yourself, I suppose. Sometimes in life we meet people who are just on the same page, the same wavelength, and amazing things can happen.
So I started to meet different people who were going to get me where I wanted to go, and one of them was Kevin Quinn. He was an outdoor pursuit instructor in Shannockmore, but he also mountain centre, stuff like that. Solid. And we had teamed up, and we had said we're going to do different climbs. So we did all the big climbs in Scotland and the North Face, and we're doing all different, places. And we ended up going to Alaska, doing Denali, and then we went to Logan and doing the Northeast Ridge on Logan, all outdoor stuff, you know what I mean? Really exciting, really, pushing the envelope. And then one of the climbs that I was with Kevin was doing a different route on the North Face, and I was doing a climb. Well, we didn't know it was in condition, and um, Paul Clark and myself decided, we want to do something hard, so we decided we were looking round, we weren't exactly what we're going to do. We're probably just going to do Tar Ridge, and then he says, I think 0.5's on, but we only had one 9mm rope.
I'll jump in here, in case some people are unfamiliar with the Scottish mountains. Banjo is referring to Point 5 Gully on Ben Nevis, which is renowned around the world as one of the finest Scottish winter routes and will attract climbers from all over the world, when in condition. It is a Scottish Grade 5 route, which makes it beyond the armchair mountaineer for sure. You need to have serious technical skills, the right equipment, and the right conditions to attempt this route. Some of the pitches have become notorious: Rogue Pitch, Chimney Pitch. It was first climbed in 1959 over 5 days and 29 continuous hours of climbing. Excellent training for harder routes to come, but a challenge at the time for Banjo that quickly became an epic.
And I sure would still go for it, And there's two French guys in front of us that we were chatting, and they were going, I said, fuck it, come on, we'll do it. So that's off. Now, you have to remember the gear that I had. I had an old axe, straight axe, and a pair of, what is it called? A pair of dactyl axe, a wee small short one. And I had Dachstein mitts, just old Dachsteins, the oil-based or skin ones, and they end up huge, and then boiling and shrink them down there, and that was it. And we just went, and with enough gear, we just had, I think, 3 ice crews between us and a few pitons. There wasn't friends and wasn't a lot of gear, it was just, fuck it, sure, and give it a go. Everything went well. I was on the second or third pitch, and I heard a few screams, and the French guys had fallen. Well, unknown to us was They had climbed the route, no problem, but there's huge big cornice at the top, and they had taken off their gear, and it, you don't finish a climb until you're over the very top. And they were going over the top themselves, and the two of them had come off then and was passes on that had taken down a lot of debris and ended up there was a big huge spindrift from it, and from the spindrift then I was climbing up with no gear. I remember the last wee bit of gear, put an ice screw in, it wasn't the greatest, and on down I managed to get a sling round like an ice block, and I'd say I was about 80 feet up with no gear, and the last bit of gear, and my dad says, Clark, was get something there, and I said, nothing, sure, nothing with me. I just, I'll just go on to I'll just go for it. Sometimes it's better, rather than look around and hope for stuff, just go for it. In hindsight, should have hoped and put gear in, and I ended up, big block hit me, and I took a screamer. Like 1880s, 160 feet of screaming way down. Now, poor Paul, he was doing old school. He didn't have the stitch plate. He thought there wasn't enough dynamic in it, and he did a waist belay on a climb. So, lucky enough, the gear had held, the ice screw popped, but the ice bollard held. The only thing is, he had crunched his solar plex, and I was squeezing him. So when I took the screamer, I went down, bounced off the rock, which sort of slowed down the overall impact, and was upside down, hanging. And I remember, winded, and coughing, and I could taste the blood in the mouth, where it's called perfusion in the lungs. We get the impact, plus fingers were so, it was frostbitten, like I was banging the top of my wee finger, the skin and sore and stuff like that. It was just a nightmare, and I ended up, he had stood on the rope, managed to climb up. He was, at that stage, I thought he was going to cut the rope. They were talking about touching the fight. This is before it was he said he was going to let it go, and I remember swinging in mid-air and half drowning now, because spindrift just keeps going out. It's like a waterfall. And every now and again, you can swing out of it so I can breathe, and then back in and try to get a purchase on the ice to pull myself back in. That's what I did eventually. But the rope was wrapped around me because it was upside down. It was a fucking mayhem. But he realised then that I was still alive. And then I remember climbing up to him again, blood around. He says, holy fuck. He says, I've stood on that rope, so we don't have enough tab off. Says we're just going to have to climb on. Now, I happy enough. Like, he seemed to be all right. He was old school. I went, yeah, I'm all right. So I remember going on, and on the third or fourth pitch, his ice axe broke. So I ended up getting his and stabbing, stabbing into the ice axe instead of, the traditional way, and spent the whole night hobbling up and down. A block hit me, broke my patella, but I didn't know it at the time. So, cut long story short, that's my introduction. And I realised it was a Friday night, and I should be out this good. And busted, and getting to the top of the bed. At the very top, there's like a wee fridge at the top, shelter hut. Remember crawling into it, and I'll tell you, that's how much snow was. When you walk up in it, it was just level with the plateau. Remember crawling in it and getting in it, staying the night in it. But the boys had their own epic on Observatory Ridge, and they were even late getting off it. So we all stayed that night, and the next morning I remember crawling with the broken leg down, boys pulling me along, flat down, and down in and into the hospital. And I remember putting the head down. He says, I'm going to be out partying here. And the next day, I didn't really. I woke up, the leg and plaster. But that's what mountaineering was all about then, it was old school.
Touching the Void, for anyone who doesn't know, is a terrific book by Joe Simpson, an epic tale of survival in the Andes, whilst attempting the west face of Sula Grande in Peru. Well worth a read, and in fact the movie isn't too bad either. It has a famous or infamous moment where Simon Yates, Joe's climbing partner, is put in the desperate position to cut a rope holding Joe. I won't spoil the story any further. Banjo's story certainly has similar echoes of this, and many other epics I have read about in the mountains. Everything seemed to be going wrong. It was a hell of an introduction to the seriousness of mountaineering, especially in winter in Scotland, and I think it definitely qualifies as old school. The two French climbers unfortunately lost their lives that day, but it wasn't Banjo's first experience of tragedy in the hills.
I was over in Scotland. I was picked at the age of 15/16, and we were doing, it was like a outward bound sort of trip, and that's where I met my first fatality in the mountains. We were there as a group. You were there for 3 weeks, and you did all different outdoor education type of stuff. And one of the guys was, um, he was walking along. We were doing the Anagiga Ridge, and off he went. He just fell, slipped, and then he'd one of them rucksacks with the frames on it, and he just, it was like a sled over. Killed. He was killed, and that was the first time I've ever seen, that happening at that young age. Yeah, James Dean, you called him. I actually went to see his memorial a few years back. It's still there at Lockheed Outward Bound Centre. I remember going back then to have a look at it, just to, pay my respects again. But that was my first sort of. So I knew the mountains, there's big dreams, but there's big sacrifices, at an early age,
Big sacrifices, but Banjo was willing to take the risk. If you have listened to previous episodes of this podcast, you will know about the 1993 Irish expedition to Everest, Dawson Stelfox, Frank Nugent and the team. There were a good few trekkers who went along on that trip, and Banjo was one of them. It was his first taste of Everest.
Hey, it's everything that I dreamed of. You used to think then, it wasn't the first time I had altitude, but you're going up further there, but see all the dreams and aspirations you had, it sort of came true. I'm not an emotional person, I remember getting a lump in my throat when I first saw Everest, as when you're coming up the glacier and it actually comes into focus, and it's not like the south side, where you can't see it, you see the tip of it. There it's all in its splendour, Now, I love the whole culture going through Tibet. I love the Tibetan way of life, the Buddhists and all were great to us, but seeing the mountain, it's just like so photographic, you know what I mean? It's exactly what you want. You see the northeast ridge, you see the north ridge going up, and you see a summit, and see the plumage of the wind, where it's hitting the cold and making cloud, and you go, wow, that's it. That's what I do. Like, I'm actually here. Like, you have to pinch yourself, because you have to say to yourself, here's me, like a normal fella, lived in a big house, hadn't any money. The rub the guy, I actually get sponsored. Somebody give me the money to actually come on this trip. But I wouldn't have had, the finances for it. And that was it. Daddy nailed it. I was going, I'm getting this on summit. I don't know when, but I will, get this summit. And I remember getting there, and I was super fit. I was 25 years of age, and I knew that I could run up it. I was so super fit then, my pulse rate was around 40. It's 46 now, but it was really low, which was great. And I was doing deep breathing before people were doing, the half-man way. There was no half-man way then. But I was told from an early age, the likes of Kevin would have said, see, anytime you're nervous, you take the deep breaths. Now, we didn't know the benefits of all that there, but it actually puts up your blood sats as well, and it prevents, altitude sickness. So you stop now and again, and you're a heavy breather, and you go, in through the nose, out through the mouth. But it's a boxing thing. We would do that, the boxing breathing, and that's what they wanted, and we were doing that all the time, and that did help with the acclimatization. And see now, that's the big thing now. If you're going to altitude train, you want to stop every half an hour and throw really hard for at least a minute to get near enough lightheaded, so you're getting all that oxygen. and actually it's better for altitude sickness and pushing up against it. So it was way before the time, on that stage I was taking ginkgo biloba, like instead of the aspirin, thinning the blood naturally, with natural herbs and stuff like that. And eating right. So we're doing all the right things, and I just went, I just felt so good. People were falling apart. I noticed team members who were actually there decline, there was a person team decline, and I went, that's for the boys, you know what I mean? And got the base camp and ready to rip, and then it's 21 kilometers. You think people just automatically think, you go from base camp to advanced base camp, but it's 21 clicks, and you're going from about 15,500 feet up to 21,000 feet. That's a queer push, and halfway through you would stay and then up. And I remember getting advanced base camp and really getting into it then and seeing the North Col for the first time, the North Wall, and going, I want to taste that. I want to push on. And at that stage, people were scoffing certain members, going, geez, Banjo's going to fucking pass everybody, And it said it as a joke, but then the joke became a bit of, people were saying, I know it's I only hear the track, and, people started getting even funny with you and going, I'm only here, just for the experience and all, and if I can help out, I'll take tents up to Camp 1 and I'll, help out. And, well, there was things, and I got as far as the North Call, and then I was told that's as far as you go. And that's all I'm going to say with the thing. I'm a wee bit disappointed because people saying, oh, if you're feeling fit and you're feeling strong, I know people might have said it, and probably I wasn't insured or afraid. There's a bigger picture, obviously, with team, there's no way in team and stuff like that there, and you just can't have this individual that sort of people didn't know surpassing our people, and the altitude didn't seem to make a difference to him, and he felt strong and stuff like that. But one part of the claim team that was said, it was hard to accept at the time, I suppose I was a wee bit naive too, wanting to excel, but you would be surprised what people say as a joke, and then all of a sudden they're going, the realisation, maybe this kid that nobody sort of knew is running up this mountain and this altitude isn't affecting him. And I was carrying a huge pack. I carried a huge pack up the advanced base camp with all the gear and all the equipment, my own tent, everything. Because people say, oh, if you take your stuff, I took things literally, and people say, oh, if you come up there and if you want to go for it, So I had all the gear with me, and all of a sudden it was, where's this kid going, But anyhow.
I find this part of Banjo's interview very interesting. Certainly, conversations were had about how far the trekkers could go. It wasn't something that came up really in the interviews with Frank and Dawson, but clearly Banjo had been left with the impression that things were not set in stone and depended upon performance during the trek and beyond. I don't want to speculate anymore because I cannot be certain, not having been there, but Banjo was deeply disappointed at not being able to go higher, especially as he seemed to be performing so well. Banjo would not be deterred. He would get his chance, 10 years later, in 2003. I asked him about the intervening years.
So I climbed all over the world. I decided, right, to achieve something, you have to believe it. So now I've believed, achieved. Now I'm building up my experience to climb on it. And I thought you still had to be part of a country, to be part of an expedition team. And we had met, believe it or not, Rod Hall in 93, and he's talking about he's going to take people and they're going to pay him big money. And I remember as a young person, in a conversation, I wasn't part of the conversation. I'm just in a wee restaurant listening to this guy saying that he's going to take mountain, he's going to take multimillionaires or people that can pay money. And there's a thing called commercialism, which I didn't understand. Commercialism for me was like, industrial type thing, Now, what does all that mean? She says that people's going to pay that fella there. You know, we were laughing. They're actually going to, somebody with a lot of money is going to pay him and he's going to take them up to the top with a load of Sherpas, with a load of oxygen, and we were all laughing at it going, that wouldn't be possible. And he says, no, but how are they going to get there? You know, technically, how are they going to train on? She says, no, he's going to put ropes all the way from the bottom to the top. And we were going, nah, who would do that? Who's going to pay him to come to here? Because you have to suffer.
Never a truer word was said. From what I have heard from all my interviews so far, to climb Everest you have to suffer. We will leave it there with Banjo for this episode, but join us next week to hear more about Banjo's 2003 expedition to Everest, led by Richard Duggan, another Armagh man, an expedition that had its fair share of trouble and strife, and a clash of some big egos maybe. If you are enjoying the podcast so far, please do like and subscribe and leave a comment to let us know what you think and how we can improve. If you would like to get in touch, check us out on Instagram, Facebook, or send a message to whythemountainspodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. Thanks again for listening. Stay safe and stay cool.